Hey friends, Doug here from 2 Plus Tough, and today I am going to be taking a look at these guys. This is the Steelforged from Bellum. They're for the Dweghom faction, which is like their name for dwarves. And so in today's video, we're going to talk about the kit. I'm going to show just a few brief pictures. This isn't like an unboxing video, but I'm going to go over the lore for these bad guys, show you what they look like when they're built, or like size comparisons. I think there's a lot of value in that, especially if you're a bits hunter. And so then I'm going to move over to talking about how they play in the actual game, Last Argument of Kings, and just kind of give my overall thoughts on these and ask the question, is this a cool kit? Really quickly, before we jump into that though, I want to give a big thank you to Bellum for sending me these Steelforged. They sent it to me right when I was beginning to move, so I kind of got lost in the shuffle. And if you'd like to support the channel and get some of your own or any additions to your existing Conquest army, please be sure to use the affiliate link in my description down below, because every single time you do, it helps me, my wife, our cats, and I'm turning off ads here on this channel, and so it just means the world to me. YouTube puts way too many ads into videos that are kind of my length. You save 10%, and a little tip goes to the channel. So without further ado, let's get into it. Popping the sucker out of the box, one thing I do want to point out is you do get your command card that comes with the unit, and I do want to comment on the fact that Bellum has gotten much better at creating instructions for their model kits. The old ones were just these kind of very rough pictures, but these ones actually come with like numbered items on the sprue. If you're unfamiliar with Bellum plastic, it is exceptionally thick and durable. These guys do not break easy, they are not fiddly, and they are beasts. Go ahead and pause the video if you want to check out the way the sprues look, and you can zoom in there. All in all, the kit is very condensed and packed down. What's interesting, I'm looking at the sprue here, is that there are a few pieces, kind of like some of the face plates and the back armor and stuff, that make fantastic bits that you could definitely use just like for objective markers and things like that. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to build one of these bad boys, and while I'm doing so, I'm going to talk about the lore behind the Steelforged. So while that building is going on in the background, let's talk about the lore behind the Steelforged. And to be honest, we don't have a lot of information. Bellum is generally speaking pretty good about releasing lore tidbits or posting them to their website about kits that just come out. This one seems to have fallen through the cracks a little bit, but there is a bit of information on the side of the box here. And since it's not on the site, I thought I'd share it. Now for the full story on Dweghom, I did a dedicated lore series on them. I'll leave a link to that in the description down below, but to put it really briefly, these are dwarves who were created by dragons as sort of a subservient race that gained their autonomy and freedom after digging too deep and tapping into the primordial god of war deep within the earth. Now I'm going to do a bit of a yada yada, but some of these now called Dweghom, meaning that's the new term for dwarves that have gained sort of sentience, well, some of these Dweghom can channel that power of war or just the elemental things around them into weapons. Sorcerers, right? We have the tempered sorcerer, we have the steel shaper. These are just different manifestations of magic that are happening within their race. But it is hard to become a sorcerer of any kind, and not all applicants who apply succeed. So what happens to the ones who fail? Well, that is the subject of today's video. What do you do with someone who obviously shows an immense amount of aptitude for wielding, fire or earth magics as a weapon, but don't necessarily have the aptitude, or maybe the discipline rather, to turn that into an area of study and focus and a career and become a sorcerer? One who can actually lead armies and unleash hellish magics on the battlefield. Well, they are already kind of rigged up to be a sorcerer. If you see the actual sorcerer miniature, he has like these weird little like metallic things fused into his skin. Essentially, they are trying to channel the power of fire and earth and stuff like that. And so they have these little runes and cutouts and metal glyphs embedded into their skin because it helps them channel it in a direction. Well, these aspirants had those things installed too. So what can we do with that? Well, essentially, they went and built a mechanical exoskeleton. I guess if this is 40k, we're calling it a dreadnought if you need that kind of comparison. Although the person inside is still healthy and well. But you put this aspirant who wants to be a sorcerer, who is exceptionally gifted in fire magic, into this machine, and you just point them at an enemy and you're like, go nuts. You don't need discipline. You need to run forward and murderate things. And so that's exactly what they do. So each one of these things is essentially a trainee or flunk of a sorcerer who is put inside of a metal box and told to just go let out their anger. their magics create heat. Heat creates steam and energy, and actually that's why there's some really cool pipes and things like that on the back of them. And so when the battle is starting, for example, the enemies, let's say 100 kingdoms in this example, they're looking up at this Dweghom army and they see these huge, clunky looking things. And that's because they haven't been warmed up yet. The Steelforged are like still kind of cooled or whatever. But the second the battle starts, when that fire magic roars through these things and the steam starts flowing and all of a sudden they just go ballistic, people are often amazed at how quickly and viciously they can attack, for the same reason as the infernal automata. Is like they're described as like big hulking constructs, but when they move, it's almost too fast. Like it's jarringly fast to see something that big move that swiftly. Now I would love a short story about these guys, maybe like the story of someone who's dealing with the rejection of not succeeding as a sorcerer or whatever, and then having to like pilot it and tell themselves like there's reasons to be proud of this as well, that I still have the magic, or it wasn't me the entire time, whatever you want to cliche you want to add there. There's some great story fodder for someone who has to deal with both failure but also maximizing the gifts that they do have. That's about all the information there really is. Let's get back to the video. So moving into the size comparisons, here we have the completed model standing next to a couple of Age of Sigmar minis. Then here's an infantry-sized model from Warhammer 40,000, a Marvel Crisis Protocol character, and here he is next to a small poster depicting country music star and national treasure Dolly Parton. So as far as the kit goes, I do have a little bit of building instructions after having seen the written guide and then actually building it. It has you like hold the legs together and then put the back plate on and then the front plate. You don't have to do that. Just make the torso itself and then the legs just plug right into the sides. Because I don't know if you saw in the fast forwarded version, but I had a lot of trouble like trying to get everything to hold together. Just build the torso completely and then the legs just peg right into the sides. You may have noticed in the pictures, there is a fair bit of overhang when it comes to the front feet. I couldn't get it to pose in the same way on this round base that it looks. I don't know if that image is them on the square base where it would fit. It's just something to keep in mind. That being said, it does feel like a soft reboot of the, what are they? Infernal Automata, kind of like their light scout units. I know they're not the same, but in terms of like the mech feel of something just kind of rushing forward, model kit design, I really like them. The posability of the arms, because they're in so many pieces and they're all ball joints, means you can do quite a bit. The only thing that's not really posable about them is the knees. Those knees, like the thigh and calf and the upper and lower leg, are fused together in a very particular spot. However, the ankles and everything else in the arms are all ball joints. But it's fantastic plastic, it's high quality, and there's a lot of great detail there. And so now what we're going to do is move over to the shared screen, and we're going to talk about the Steelforged from a rules perspective. What does he do? How do they fit into your army? Who can take them? That kind of stuff. Here we are on the Bellum Army Builder. I absolutely adore this site because all the information is so easy to see. So, clocking in at 210 points, these boys are pricey, okay? But a movement of 6, which is weirdly a commodity in the Dweghom army. Volley of 0, no ranged weapons go. They have a clash of 3, attacks 4, 5 wounds. So these, I should also mention they are brutes and they are medium. So medium's important because a lot of the other tanky things like them tend to come in earlier, like as lights, like the Infernal Automata, or much later as heavy. But anyway, 5 wounds, resolve 4, defense 5, and evasion 1. Now what that tells me immediately, these are chunky boys. You're going to have them coming in mid-game. Again, they're medium. You can auto bring them in pretty early in the game now and just try and get them to fire up the field. But honestly, that's a heavy price tag for this stat line. So let's get into the special rules and stuff like that. First, they have a draw event called Flux Powered. Now it's important to remember before we get into the draw events are by nature option. So if there's a different draw event that you want to use on these guys, you can. You're not locked into this. But Flux Powered, until the end of the round, choose one of the following bonuses for this regiment to receive. Either +2 to the clash characteristic or +2 to the attacks characteristic. Now, first of all, this is a fantastic rule because the only downside is that you don't get both. But like, you're not sacrificing anything. It's not like you have to -2 defense to get +2 attacks. There's no external synergies of like, oh, if there's a wizard nearby, you can do this. Nope. You just get. And what's nice is because you're not locked in, whatever they charge into, like, you get to know exactly what would be the most beneficial thing for you. Are they really hard to hit? Like penalties, negative penalties to being able to clash? Did you charge this round and so you're inspired and so you don't have to worry really about the clash value? You'd much rather get the attacks value. That kind of stuff. Just do the math in your head, but there's freedom there that I enjoy. As for their special rules, they have Cleave 1. Again, that's going to be reducing the defense of the opponent. There's Fearsome, where all of a sudden your opponent has to make a dice roll to be able to do a combat rally or combat reform, which realistically is more to help them from being like enveloped by a unit. You know, they keep reforming and getting more ranks in and that kind of thing. This is more to kind of curb that. They're not going to get bogged down too hard in terms of being physically surrounded. And Impact 2. So when they do that charge in, they are each getting 2 attacks on the enemy. Now, someone correct me in the rules if I am incorrect. However, my understanding is you would do the draw event, which would give you +2 attacks or +2 to your clash. However, that doesn't have anything to do with impact attacks, right? For example, please let me know in the comments. My understanding is that if you chose +2 clash at the draw event, it doesn't affect the impact attacks specifically. Obviously, it wouldn't. The attacks wouldn't, because impact 2 determines how many dice you're rolling. So that's irrelevant, whatever the attack stat is. But I'm curious, because my understanding is it would not impact the clash attacks specifically, or the clash value specifically on the impact attack. Whoever leaves the most helpful comment or clarifies what I said, I will pin it to the top. Thank you so much. Here they have a leader, and basically they just get +1 attack for the main guy. They do not really bring in much to the table in terms of leadership ability, but they can get a standard bearer, so they can re-roll charge. So on their own, I actually really like this loadout. We have in Dweghom, I tended to run a lot of infantry heavy lists, and so this is the kind of backbone that I didn't really have. Like, right, we have the Fire Drake or whatever, but he's fantastic at shooting. We want something that can get in there and just blender things, wipe off objectives in the mid to late game. The Steelforged are a great option. However, this is not all the information you need to make intelligent choices about this regiment, because in Conquest, if you're not familiar, whenever you see a regiment that you like, which is their word for unit, you have to remember that they can only be taken by certain heroes. And this is kind of where the game of list building kind of starts up, because the Steelforged are an incredibly cool option that can be taken by exactly one hero. That would be the Tempered Steel Shape. For him, the Steelforged are a restricted option, so you would need to have at least one mainstay option for each restrict. Now, I'm not really going to suggest a mainstay option to pair with them, because quite frankly, that's going to depend greatly on your list and how you need to fill out units to account for restricted and mainstay choices. I'm not going to do any of that. Instead, I'm just going to talk about the Tempered Steel Shaper in the context of the Steelforged. So ignoring his stats, because if he's in melee, you've made a horrible error. Let's go straight into his spells and his supremacy ability, because to me, that's actually what matters the most. For example, he has a spell of Hone Blade, range 12 inches. Regiment adds +1 to its clash characteristic until the end of the round. Well, you know your boys get to choose either +2 to their clash or attacks. What if you knew they were going to charge? You had the Steel Shaper activate first, he gives them +1 clash. They charge, now they're inspired. They get that second clash, and because of you knew that coming, you chose +2 attacks. All of a sudden, you get both benefits. And the only thing you've actually sacrificed to achieve this is simply having your Tempered Steel Shaper go, which is sweet. Now, he also has a great spell, Unmake Armor. It essentially is adding an ounce of cleave to something. It just -1 to the defense characteristic of stuff, which is great because it affects both shooting for your giant Fire Drake that's going to be right behind these dudes and these guys in melee. But I bring it up because it's essentially being another way, if you have the Steel Shaper behind the Steelforged, he's essentially giving them Cleave 2 for all intents and purposes. You target the same enemy that they're going after. If Cleave is what's needed, you can provide it. And lastly here is Temper Plate. This is another buff to one of your units, and you pick one of your regiments in 12 and they gain the Hardened 1 special rule. If you're not familiar with Hardened, it essentially negates Cleave. So Cleave 1 would become 0. Cleave 2 becomes Cleave 1. And what this essentially does is if you're staring across the table from a army that has a lot of access to Cleave, this becomes utterly invaluable in keeping these guys alive just a little bit longer. Remember, they're defense 5, so anytime you can remove a bit of Cleave, if you know that that's what they're being thrown into, is an absolute win for you. Now, there's a few other things to mention here. There are, if I'm not mistaken, artifacts and ways to get other units other than the written mainstay and restricted into into a thing. Like there's an upgrade or expertise, which allows you to basically take 3 units, and then they don't have to be from your specific, you know, list of mainstay or whatever, but you're kind of locked in and limited in how many. My point is, other heroes technically have ways to get these guys in their list, but the reason I want to stick with the Tempered Steel Shaper is because, quite frankly, he's an incredible toolbox to you as a Dweghom player, but also specifically to this unit, which he, of course, is narratively tied. They are tanky. He makes them tankier. They are fighty. He makes them fighty. They want to shred into an enemy. He wants to make the enemy weaker to do that. I mean, those are literally his 3 spells. And if you take the Steel Shaper as your warlord, which you don't have to, but if you did, once per battle, immediately heal each friendly regiment for 6 wounds. 6 wound is a lot. You're generally speaking going to get one of these guys back, if not a second. Depends on, you know, how many wounds there are to the given unit or whatever, but like, yeah, I guess you wouldn't get 2 guys back, but you'd be enough to top off 1 and then get a second, not mistake. But I mean, when they're 5 wounds, bring it back 6, you're getting a dude. And I think that makes these dudes a killer combination, because even if you just took a warband of the Steel Shaper, the Steelforged, and then for your mainstay unit took, what are they, whole ballista? The ballista just run up and pin on the objectives as fast as they can, knowing they're going to get charged and probably wiped out. But your second punch, that second one that's coming in right behind them, is the Steelforged, and they will wreck somebody's deck. And that's all you're doing. You're setting the aligned of engagement, and then this is the right hook to come behind it. So friends, I hope you enjoyed this little exploration of the Steelforged. I had a great time doing it. Thank you so much to Bellum for sending me this kit, and like I said, if you'd like it or you want anything to add to your army, please consider using the affiliate link down below, as it saves you money and throws a little tip in my tip jar to keep the channel going. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I'll catch you next time. Happy wargaming.